Good evening and welcome to tonight's driver's ed class. I hope that you had a great day at school. I feel kind of guilty bringing you to your computers once again today to do more studying, but this is what we have for the remainder of this week and next week, and then you'll be done with this component of driver's ed, and then we can focus on the driving. So we'll wait till people sign in. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit of a delay since most people are probably just so tired they don't want to be taking more notes. That's the last thing that you want to be doing tonight. Let me just turn this down a little bit. I am once again going without the microphone, so hopefully the computer mic will be picking me up. I'm going to try again this weekend to work on getting my USB mic to be working, because I really like that a lot better. A couple things before we get going. I didn't have time tonight to look at the new schedule that you have, but apparently the schedule that Q gave me had classes starting, at least C period, starting around 9:40, but I believe it was 10:40 before we were able to drive. So I've got to find out what the actual schedule is so I can really set up drive times. But if anybody is willing to drive tomorrow during your free period, I think, Ben, you've got B. If someone wants to drive during lunch, I'll come get you. We'll drive during lunch. After school, so I've got three. Let me get this up here first. Actually, do I have my phone? I don't even have my phone with me. That's not good. Let me just get up my schedule here for a second. I want to take a look at what I have for openings. And for some reason, oh, there it is. I have 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock open for tomorrow. 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So text me after class if you can do that. I do have times on Friday at 3 and 4, and Saturday from 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So I want to really try to get you scheduled in and to get a lot of driving done, because it's not a big class that's starting after yours, but I do have a class, because once you don't have class, it's your responsibility to get a hold of me to drive, because I'm not going to see your name up here. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be getting your homework and saying, oh, by the way, do you want to drive? Because you're going to be done. So really important that you stay on top of this. I know it's going to be a big sacrifice, trying to get this done, but it's something that we have to do. So hopefully we'll be able to do those spots. So remember, tomorrow I have most of the day open. And then from there in the afternoon, I've got 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So let's kind of talk about a few things about yesterday's class, because we talked about penalties. And I am missing a ton of homework. Okay, you've got to remember, we're going to be done next week. But if you have not done your homework, you're not taking a final. You have not finished driver's ed. Okay, so you may drag your feet. You may not want to do it. If you are not doing your homework, you're just not going to get completed. Okay, you have to do that. So make sure that you follow along with the sheet that I gave you. And when I tell you to rewrite the laws, that was from the state manual. That's what I wanted. They only talk about like 3 or 4. Okay, and remember, I just wanted a reactionary of should it be a little bit more strict or should it be a little bit more lenient. and give me an idea of why you think that way or not. So we're looking at a few paragraphs. The one thing we did not finish up on last night was drugs. So I just want to hit up on that for a moment before we get into car crashes and insurance tonight. The penalty for being under the influence of a controlled drug means that the state does not want you to be out on the roadway with these drugs. So things that come to mind would be your depressants, stimulants, hallucinogens, um, even over-the-counter drugs are somewhat controlled. Okay, you cannot be driving on medication, even though it's been prescribed to you, or even you can get it at a pharmacy over the counter. Your driving could still be adversely affected. And it's harder to prove impairment that way because it is prescribed, it is over the counter. But if you're swerving or you're going below the speed limit, that's a driving error, okay? And they will pull you over for that, okay? Whether they try to push it to the extent that it was drug induced, they may do. So I want you to write down penalty for being stopped and convicted for a controlled drug is 60 days to 2 years revocation. Revocation is different than suspension. Alcohol starts off with suspension. Remember, you do all the components that we talked about yesterday. They will give you your license back. Revocation, there is a little bit more involved of getting your license back. And one of the things that they're going to be talking about is having an SR22. Now, we're going to talk more about insurance tonight, and we'll probably hit up on that again, but I'm going to show you a little clip from a attorney here in New Hampshire that talks about SR22.
When deciding whether or not to hire a DWI lawyer, many people consider the direct consequences of a DWI conviction: a loss of license, a fine, possibly having to take some alcohol classes. But one collateral consequence that many people don't realize is that the state will require you to carry something called SR22 insurance. It's a very expensive form of insurance, and you're required to carry it as a condition of your license for a minimum of 3 years. Now, I don't sell insurance, so I can't tell you what the specific cost would be, but I know that the expenses are absolutely astronomical. That's why it's important to consider all the consequences when determining whether or not to fight this charge. I'm attorney Ryan Russman, and I look forward to meeting with you.
Okay, a couple things here. He was somewhat a little dishonest when he said that he doesn't know the cost. He doesn't know the exact cost, but he could give you a ballpark. So let me give you a ballpark: $3,000 to $5,000 a year. $3,000 to $5,000 a year for 3 years. Mandatory on your license. You cannot drive legally, even after you've lost your license for 180 days, 270 days, like we talked about last night. You did the alcohol course. You paid your fines. If you did the alcohol class, if you do not have this insurance filed, so you have to pay for it, you don't get your license. You have to have this filed with the state in order to get your license back. I just came across a student that I had a few years ago, getting his life back on track, had a DWI. Glad to see that. He's almost paid for everything, and he's looking at buying a new vehicle. But he's got to have that SR22. It's expensive. And by the way, that attorney is a good attorney for getting you off on your conviction or your arrest for DWI. But he's not cheap. He's probably at least $3,000 to $5,000. So if you make the mistake of getting behind the wheel of a car under the influence of any type of drug, you better have a pocket full of cash because it's going to be coming out. Okay, so it's a big deal. Now, like I said, you're far removed from legally drinking, but it is going to be more of your in your social circles where you're going to see more of this. And don't think that I'm that naive or the school officials are. We know about alcohol and drugs in the school system. I hear stories, especially of past students. So don't think that we don't know, we don't hear. Okay, proving it is something a little bit different, but you know that it happens. If you get behind the wheel of the car, these things will fall into place. So please, 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 if you learn nothing over the last two classes, separate yourself from driving and doing those illegal acts of drinking and drugging. They can't mix. They can't. They just don't. So that's my little speech. Oh, DRE. I don't know if we saw that last night, but write down DRE, Drug Recognition Expert. We know when an officer pulls you over. We talked about the field sobriety test. Only a few officers, I think under 50, are certified as drug recognition experts that will come out to assist a local stop because they know it's not alcohol, but they don't know what you're on. It's going to be a DRE officer that's going to come out and do a battery of tests to try to find out whether you should have been driving or not. And it's going to probably end up with you going to the hospital for a blood test. And with a blood test, we're going to be pretty accurate to know what type of substance that you're on. So don't think because they can't smell alcohol, they're going to let you ride away without maybe calling in this DRE officer. So just be familiar with that term and how it happens. And they're pretty close to the area. So if you get stopped, they're going to be out, with the officer that pulled you over probably within, 15 minutes. So I wanted to just talk about that briefly. All right, let's talk about tonight's subject is, and I don't like the word accident. I'm a true believer that most things can be prevented. So I like the word collision and crash, and we kind of went over that. Some of the things that we're going to state right now on this PowerPoint slide are things that we focused on at the beginning of class, the first 2 weeks, about ways that we can protect ourselves, ways that we can have better vision, be a better driver. So this is kind of rehashing some of the things that we've talked about. So defensive driving, and this makes sense, doesn't it? If every driver always obeyed the rules and always drove sensibly, driving would be simpler and safer. Of course. So I want you to write down these two things because we've covered this. Watch out for the illegal acts of others. What could this be? Someone that doesn't use a directional. Now, illegal means that you could get a ticket for. Okay, we're not talking about major things, although it could be, but we're looking at rolling through a stop sign, not using a signal, not yielding correctly. Those are illegal acts where you could get a ticket for. And then the second part of the equation is adjusting what we do. We've got two situations that we've just mentioned here. If you're not good at looking and finding out or guessing what other people are going to do, then how are you going to change what you do? You're not. You're going to be involved in bad situations. This is the only way that we're going to be able to separate ourselves from being involved in a crash. Is that you've got to anticipate, you've got to be looking, you've got to be on top of your driving. Do not be distracted. Stay alert. Keep your eyes moving. See what's happening around you at all times. Look for trouble spots. These would be areas that you normally don't see too well. That would be like parked cars. Look off near bushes and buildings at intersections. Places that you would take for granted. I think at times we just take things for granted. We should always have a good proper following distance. We want those 4 seconds. And always expect the other driver to do the wrong thing. And if he does something wrong, then what are you going to do? So write this down. You should always have 3 choices. Don't you hate it when someone tells you you have a choice? Like when you go out to eat, maybe at a wedding, you got a choice between beef and chicken. Which one do you want? Well, I really don't like either one. Is there a vegetarian option? How about fish? How about just a plate of nachos? The more options that you have, the better off you're going to be. So try to always give yourself at least 3 choices. And of the 3, of course, you're picking the better of the 3. It's kind of like a pecking order. The first one, the best one, seems to collapse. Isn't going to work anymore, then you kind of default to the second. And then if that one doesn't seem to work, you've got one more. After that, you better hold on because you're going to probably be involved in a crash. Now, I hope that none of you ever will experience a crash. And right now in the comments, how many of you have been in a vehicle that has been hit? Of course, you probably weren't the driving, but I want you, while I'm talking right now, I want people to, share with the group. I've been hit in the driver's ed car with a student twice. One was minor, the other one was a little bit more involved, more damage. No one was hurt, but the car was damaged quite a bit, $3,500 worth. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But please put down whether you have been in a crash, because I think that it's pretty jolting. And if you're driving, it's kind of unnerving. So be ready to apply your brakes so you don't get pushed into another vehicle. You don't want it to be. Look at this. We've got a few people. It's going to happen. That's why I bring it up. You're going to be driving at some point in your driving career, and you're going to be hit. So this is why we're covering this tonight. Look at this. Everybody has been in a car that's been hit. That's scary. That is something. So tonight's class is really important. So get ready to apply your brakes so you don't get pushed to another vehicle, especially if you're at a stop sign and someone hits you from behind. Brace yourself between the steering wheel and the back of your seat, because your body is going to, throw you forward, and then press your head firmly against the headrest because you don't want to have whiplash. If you're going to get hit from the side, and this is what happened in the driver's ed vehicle, we were T-boned near Saxby's, and I'm going to show you a picture of it a little bit later. This is what we call like being T-boned. So write down your notes. If you're getting hit from the side, it's going to probably happen in town at traffic lights, stop signs, and people backing out of angle parking spots. And it could be in a parking lot, actually. People backing out of a perpendicular will have a tendency to ram into people on the side. So look out for these trouble areas. And we know that people run stop signs and traffic lights. We know people have a hard time backing out of parking spots. So we're always looking where am I most vulnerable? Where am I going to have my most likelihood of an incident? And that's where we're focusing our attention. And then be ready to steer quickly so we can try to control the vehicle if we do get hit. Because we never want to make things worse. Now, being hit from the front is by far the worst type of crash that you'll ever be involved in. So the first thing here that I want you to write down is hit your brakes as hard as you can. Remember, you can't break your brakes. By bringing your speed down, you're lessening the impact. Let's give an example. You're on the highway, someone's texting and crosses the center line, and they're heading into your lane and about to hit you head on. Why wouldn't you hit the brake as hard as you possibly can? Because if you do nothing, and you're going 55, 60, and they're going 55 and 60, that's 110, 120 miles per hour total impact. If you can drop your speed in half and they can drop your speed in half, I'd much rather have total impact around 50, 60 miles per hour, because the likelihood of survival goes up. The faster you go, the likelihood of injury and death go up. So it's just being smart. All right. You have now been involved in a crash. So I want you to write this down. And I want you to follow. And I don't know if I can actually bring this up. Let's see. Hold on for a second. I'm going to see if I can bring this up. I'm going to see if it pops in. There it is. This is what we're going to be doing later tonight. I have downloaded this onto Facebook. If you have a problem downloading this from our remote Facebook page, then you're going to have to text me and I'll send you a copy via text. But this is what the state has called an accident report. This is a necessity by the state. You have to. It's a law, okay? It's a law that you must file this report. So this is the back page. So there's two pages. I just threw on the back page. This is the page that we're going to be focusing on mostly later tonight. So let me X out of that. So let's kind of get into what are the steps we need to follow if we're involved in a crash. Now you would think that, why would you have to put down stop? Because people drive away. Tonight, while I was having my dinner and thinking about tonight's class, they actually had 2 news reports in Massachusetts where people had been involved in hitting pedestrians and drove off. One of them was a 17-year-old and the other was a 43, and he hit the person in his company car, construction worker. I know the 17-year-old, they say they believe drugs were involved. He was driving without a valid license, and he's had an incident before. These are the people that will not stop. People that shouldn't be driving and they don't want to get caught. And by the way, penalties will always be worse if you drive away than if you were to stop and face the music. Now, are these 2 drivers going to get in a lot of trouble? Absolutely. One of them, I think it's the 17-year-old, he actually killed his pedestrian. The 43-year-old construction worker, I believe he didn't. I believe it was just an injury with a husband and wife, but still not good. Now, if you can move your vehicle off the road, it says don't block traffic. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be involved in another crash. Now, this is, and I don't have my phone with me, so bear with me. I'm gonna use this. This is one of the batteries that I use for my camera, so I'm gonna make believe this is my phone. So what I want you to write down in your notes, before you move your vehicle, okay? You don't want to get hit again, so you don't want to, have a problem with traffic. But if you can, you want to get out of your vehicle if you're all right, and you want to take your phone out. So make believe this is my phone, and then you want to take a picture of all 4 sides of the vehicle. Okay, front, back, right, left. So go around the vehicle and from a distance. So what you're trying to do is to give reference of where your car is in relationship with the car you hit or the car that hit you. Because the minute you separate the 2 vehicles, it's going to be a game of, no, he did it. He hit me. And that person's going to say, no, you hit me. And it's going to be finger pointing. And you're going to call the police, and they're going to have a hard time really figuring out, well, what really did happen. Because the placement of your vehicle out on the roadway is really a true sign of what probably went down. Now, they can take measurements of skid marks, but like today it was raining. There's not going to be skid marks on a a slick roadway. Matter of fact, you're not going to see much on a slick roadway. So take pictures all the way around the vehicle. Okay, really, really important. Can't believe I didn't bring my phone in. Call 911 and give aid to people. Really important. Write this down. Stay within the scope of your training for giving aid. So most of you have probably been trained in first aid and CPR. but people need your help. The first 10, 15 minutes after a crash is so vital in calling 911, stopping bleeding, maybe resuscitating people, because you can't go very long without breathing. So definitely, if someone needs CPR, you got to start that as soon as possible. It's not one of those things you can, hope and pray that someone else pulls over and knows it and can do it. Um, I don't know if you've ever seen a crash, but it can be a little bit gory. I don't know, for those of you that said that you've been involved in a crash, I don't know if anybody was seriously injured, but I have come upon multiple crashes where people have been extremely hurt. So try to help out the most that you can. But if you're in a car and your help's not needed, then you probably should drive on. Now get the names and addresses of all people involved. Now, in this day and age, what I would highly recommend, because most people don't carry around a pen or a pencil, you might not even have one in your vehicle, but you do have your phone. Okay, you could actually ask for people to speak into your memo. You can do a voice memo. Um, you could take a picture of someone's license and follow up with going to their house or getting a written statement from them later. But it's really important that you do that. So what do you record of the other driver? Same thing. Name and address, license number, state of issue, make of the vehicle, model of the year, damage to the vehicle, insurance company name and addresses of passengers, because you're going to want to fill out your crash report, and the insurance company is going to want to know basically how many people were involved in the crash. Once again, take a picture, and I'm going to show you in a minute what I did. But before we get to that, because I don't think that any of you probably have thought about this, but when you get your driver's license, you do have a driver's license number. So what I want you to do is to, I don't know if I can, my dog is right next to me here, so I don't want to, I think I can do it like this. Okay, so what I want you to write down, you can do it with me. So write down the month that you were born. So I'm going to make up a birthday. So the month you were born. So I'm going to say September. Okay, my last name begins with a T. So write down the first letter of your last name. Write down the last letter of your last name. So Toll ends with an E. Write down the first letter of your first name. So far we've got the month you were born, the first letter of your last name, the last letter of your last name, the first letter of your first name. Now I'm going to make this up. Write down the year you were born. So we're going to say probably someone in this class was born in 04. Okay, so you were born September in the year 04. Write down the day that you were born. We're going to say that you were born on the 21st. And then if there's nobody else in the state with this sequence, then you become, I believe, an 01, or it could be just 1. But this would be your license number. All right? If someone else had the same sequence and you've got, then yours would be an 02, and then they would just go down and they would just change the last digit right here. And we're going to a real ID in New Hampshire. So your license are going to be, they're going to look really different. They emboss the state emblem. There's going to be ways that they can figure out whether someone's fooled around with the license or not. But your license is really important. I'll tell you why this is really important. I had a student, this was many, many years ago, even before I think police cars had good computers in their vehicles because before they just got information from a dispatcher. But I had a student that looked just like his brother. I had both of them in driver's ed, and they were spitting images of each other. And the younger one would tell me, he would admit to it, that he would take his parents' car on weekends when his parents were gone and drive without a valid license. And when he got stopped, he would just say that he was his brother. And he'd say that he forgot his license, but he'd say, I know my license number. And he would rattle off, and the police can actually check that. And it would say, oh, yeah, it matches up. He's telling the truth. No, he's not. He's telling me what his brother's. So that's what he did. But it's important. And the reason why, if you ever get hit and someone doesn't have a license, the first thing that should go through your mind is they don't have a valid license. Because most people will be driving with a valid license. And by the way, if someone says, I will just pay for it, here's my name, I know I was at fault, I'm so sorry, I don't have my license with me, but believe me, I'm good for it. My name is George Washington. I live in Somersworth. This is my phone number. He's giving you all fake information. And you're thinking, oh, what a nice guy. He said he's going to pay for it. He even said that he was at fault. He's just trying for you to let him drive away. If a person does not have their valid license, tell them I feel more comfortable if we call the police, and the police will help us finish out that crash report. And that report that I showed you just a moment ago that I want you to do, the police will help you fill that out. They will help you get all that information, this information that we're talking about. Give the other driver the same information. That's just being courteous. Note the details of the crash, and we're going to do that on that accident report. So it's going to ask for date, time, location, road condition, speed. Now, if the car that you crashed into was a parked vehicle, or there's some type of property damage, you should always leave a note and then contact the police and let them know what happened. Don't drive away. With cameras now, people probably have it. People probably saw what happened, and now it's going to be a hit and run. Okay, notify your insurance company and give them the information. So once again now, and we're going to talk about most insurance companies, and this is an old PowerPoint that I'm using. Most insurance companies now have apps, and we're going to take a look at an app of how an insurance company will let you input all this information right on the app. And lastly, see a doctor. You never ever know when there's some type of internal bleeding. You've got record that you were involved in a crash, so if you ever have to go to court to try to get medical bills paid for, you're going to have on record a doctor said, this is what happened, this is what I feel are the injuries. It could take a week or two before we know the severity until the swelling goes down. So at least you're going to be on record. When it says leave a note, don't leave this kind. Hi, my name is Jack. I accidentally hit your car and someone saw me, so I'm pretending to do the right thing. Okay? Wrong. Okay, that's not the type of note. That's not the type of note that you should be leaving. Okay, this is in bold type, so I want you to write this down. New Hampshire requires that if anyone is killed or injured, or if the total combined property damage is more than $1,000, you must file an official accident report to the DMV. So this is what we're going to do. You have to file it within 15 days. This is going to be part of our activity that we're going to do at the very end of tonight's class. If you're not sure whether you should be filing this, you probably should. $1,000 isn't a whole lot. Just a bumper, replacing a bumper is going to probably be more than $1,000. And then if an officer investigates and he helps you file it, he's probably going to take that file copy and send it to the DMV for you. I like always sending my version because there is a place that you can put down what you think took place. And this is where you said, he said. It can get a little bit sticky. So try not to get too upset at the people that just hit you. Accidents do happen, even though they just ruined your car, maybe injured people, but you don't want to attack people. Okay, you don't want that road rage. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. You don't want to go after people once you're involved in a crash. Make sure that your car, if you can move it after you've taken a picture of it, make sure your car is parked well off the roadway for a distance of at least 200 feet. It should be seen in both directions, front and back. So make sure the emergency flashes are on. That's going to get people out away from your vehicle. We've already called the police. Now, turning off the ignition is really smart. Even if you pulled your car off the side of the road, a car that has been hit will probably be leaking fluid. So any engine that is still left on, there's a chance that it could spark and ignite any liquids that are on the ground. If people are trapped and you're afraid that the vehicle is going to catch fire, then you have to get them out. Does that mean pulling on arms and necks and heads? And yeah, it does. It may not be the best thing for someone that's got a bad back, broken arm, but you're worried about the vehicle getting engulfed in flames. You're worried about an explosion. And you got to worry about yourself. So your time is of the essence. So you've got to just pull them out the best way, the safest way that you know how. I think most of you that know Durham can tell what road this is. It's Madbury Road, right down the road from you, right, Garrett? This is in front of Saxby's, and right between the silver car and the white car, a college student on a Saturday morning, probably around 9:30, was not paying attention and left that area and pulled out into traffic and hit the driver's ed vehicle right on the side. There's the damage to the driver's ed vehicle. It doesn't look too bad, does it? Now that's the whole damage right there. There's a little bit on the other door. You really can't see it because it's a little bit dirty, but there is a little bit of the other door. But it doesn't look too bad. It looks like you could probably just, push it right out, right? And maybe just kind of wash it and paint it and make it look a little bit better. That was roughly $3,300 worth of damage. $3,300 worth of damage, and it took them close to a week to get the car back to me. It will always cost you more than you think, and it will take you longer than you think to get your car back. When a lot of people say, I'm going to slam on my brakes and teach that person behind me not to tailgate. Well, guess what? You may have teach them a lesson, but also your car is now damaged, and you're going to be without your car for a while. And who knows? Maybe they're going to say that you hit your brakes too hard, that you were part of the problem. Yeah, they were tailgating, but you hit your brakes harder than what you were supposed to. So you may be at fault. So be careful. There's the damage to the vehicle that hit us when they were pulling out. Doesn't look too bad, does it? I don't know how much that cost, but that's their vehicle. Notice Massachusetts. And this was the person. So I asked for their registration. So here I've blocked out their address, but they were from Littleton, Mass. There's the VIN number that we've talked about that's crossed out up at the top. And the title number is crossed out. But I have their information. Okay, this is part of what they need to show proof of insurance in Massachusetts. And this was the student. This was the girl that hit us. So I just kind of blacked out that information. Now, if you do arrive at the scene of a crash and it's a fire, it says try to put it out. That's wrong. And this was from the old manual, and I kind of like using parts of the old manual, but this part I don't like. If there's a fire, get everybody away from the vehicle and run from the vehicle. Don't try to put it out. The car is totaled. It's damaged. Don't smoke around a crash because there could be fluids. That makes sense, right? Now here's one. Fallen electrical wires at the scene. Don't go near them. If you are in a vehicle, if you are in the vehicle and you have electrical wires, remember you have to jump clear of the vehicle when you get out. That means that you can't be touching the ground. Let me get out of here for a second. When you're driving and you get out of your vehicle, the minute you open the door and you take your left foot and you step out, you now become grounded. Okay, and you become electrocuted. So what they're saying here is to kind of stand on the door jamb and kind of lunge out with both feet. Don't get out the traditional way with opening the door and stepping out with your left foot, because now you're going to become electrocuted. What I recommend everybody doing is that consider yourself lucky you're alive because you're still breathing and thinking. So don't worry about being electrocuted because you're not. It would have happened by then. Just have them call for the power company and have them turn it off. Injured people must be taken care of if you feel comfortable. The law that we have is called the Good Samaritan Law, which means that out of the goodness of your heart, if you help somebody out, then it's more difficult for them to sue you, to bring class action against you. Now, New Hampshire doesn't have any insurance laws, meaning it's not mandatory. Massachusetts is, I think Maine is, I think all of them around us, Vermont. There are only 3 states, I believe. It could be four. So South Carolina, New Hampshire, Colorado, Wyoming, maybe. Which means that if you own the vehicle outright, it's your car, you own it, you don't have to have insurance. It's highly recommended that you do. And if you do have insurance, you should make sure you always have liability. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But remember that if you don't have insurance and you're involved in a crash, no one's going to fix your car for you. And that if you were the cause of the crash, you're going to be on the hook to repair the person that you just hit. So if you hit their vehicle like mine, that's $3,300. Most of you probably don't have that in the bank. So that's why people get sued. Now you're taken to court. Now remember, you are a minor, so you're going to probably go on your parents' policy. But if you're not on your parents' policy and you don't have insurance, your parents are liable for damages that you do. So if you crash into a car that's worth $50,000 and total it, your parents have to pay that $50,000 for that person to get their car back, repaired or get a new one. And that's what it means by that SR22, that you are going to be held responsible for damages. Now, New Hampshire is one of the most expensive states for insurance for young drivers. I bet you're glad that you're hearing this tonight, right? Because maybe some of your parents are making you pay for your car insurance. So the premium, you're paying an increase of 111%. I mean, that's a lot. Look at where New England is represented here. We've got New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Maine, and Connecticut. Look at the top 5. Top 5. That's horrible. Okay? The reason being is that people aren't smart enough to cover basic insurance. And then everybody has to pay because people are not responsible enough, and we end up picking up the bill for people that don't have insurance or the medical cost. When would the state require you to have an SR22? We've already talked about DWI, and we had this earlier today. We talked about it yesterday. Not reporting a crash, so the hit and run that we were talking about early tonight. Homicide, second time for reckless driving, review of a person's driving record. So if your driving record is so bad, they could say, okay, it's now your responsibility to have insurance. Okay, let's take a look. I'm going to break down what she says. Now, this is a video by Liberty Mutual. I used to have Liberty Mutual car insurance for my personal car. We have since switched to a different company, but I thought that they did a wonderful job on this little video clip about breaking down the types of insurance. I want you to think of insurance like going to a cafeteria. And as you take your tray and you go along the line, you may not want a salad, you may not want dessert, you just may want the fried chicken and the fries and a drink. That's all you want. So insurance is only paying for what you want. But to have a complete policy is like having a complete meal. You've got the salad, you've got the roll, you've got the chicken and fries, you've got your drink, you've got a dessert. That is a complete meal. Insurance is based up the same way. So what she's going to break down are what are the different components. And I want you to be familiar with these components. All right?
Hello, my name is Lisa LaLiberty. I'll be speaking on the basics of auto insurance. For most people, buying an automobile is their first major purchase. Actually, a new car is second only to a home as the most expensive purchase many consumers make. With vehicle prices averaging over $28,000, it's easy to see why one would want to protect that investment. Before we talk about coverage for the automobile itself, I'd like to start with what many people believe is the most important coverage of all, liability coverage. Liability coverage pays for the injuries or damage you or someone driving your car cause to other people or their property. The two liability coverages are called bodily injury liability and property damage liability. Every state has different laws dictating the minimum coverage you must carry for this. Some states require you to prove you have insurance before registering a motor vehicle, and other states use the honor system, where you only have to provide proof if you have an accident or violation. A typical state-required minimum coverage is 25, 50, 10, and I'll provide an example shortly to explain what that means. There are 4 states that do not require drivers to carry any liability coverage. Just because it's not required by law doesn't mean you don't need it. Let's say you have an accident. You're distracted momentarily and rear-end the BMW in front of you. There are 3 people in it, all of whom suffer some injury. If you're carrying liability coverage of 25, 50, 10, that means your insurance company will cover the cost of any one person's injuries, rehabilitation expenses, pain and suffering, and time lost from work up to $25,000. But they will not pay more than $50,000 for the accident, regardless of the number of people injured. This is the bodily injury portion. And your insurance company will pay up to $10,000 for the property damaged. So 3 people are injured. Let's say their injuries total $75,000. And the BMW has rear-end damage of $13,000. Your policy will pay for $50,000 for all injuries and $10,000 for the property damage. Where does the remaining $25,000 for bodily injury and $3,000 for property damage come from? Once your policy pays the maximum limits, you could be held personally responsible for the remaining amount. It's generally recommended that you carry more than the state minimum coverage to protect yourself from this financial risk. The next coverage under an automobile policy is medical payments coverage. This provision protects you and your passengers if you're hurt in a car accident, regardless of who's at fault. The coverage also extends to you and your family members if you're a passenger in someone else's car or if you're a pedestrian injured by an automobile. Medical payments coverage pays the medical bills resulting from an accident up to a per-person maximum, commonly $5,000. There are no deductibles and no waiting period under this coverage, and prescription drugs related to the injuries are covered. Consider that accident with the BMW again. Let's say that you and your passenger are both injured and taken by ambulance to the hospital. Medical payments coverage of $5,000 will cover the cost of the ambulance ride, the emergency room visit, and subsequent doctor's visits up to $5,000 per person. If your medical bills total $7,000 and your passengers total $3,000, the policy will pay $8,000 under this coverage. Some states have a medical payments coverage known as Personal Injury Protection, or PIP. This coverage may have a deductible, and it may allow you to collect for lost wages and rehabilitation expenses, two things that regular medical payments coverage does not cover. A third coverage provided by an automobile insurance policy is uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. This coverage is quoted similarly to bodily injury liability. Even though mandatory insurance laws exist in 48 states, nearly 15% of all accidents are caused by uninsured drivers. Uninsured motorist coverage provides protection for you and your passengers when you're injured in an accident with an uninsured motorist. It will cover your medical bills, rehabilitation expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, things you could have claimed against the at-fault party's insurance if they had it. Underinsured motorist coverage will cover those same losses if the at-fault party's coverage is insufficient for your loss. Keep in mind, in most states, the uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage applies to injury only and not for damage to your vehicle. Protection for your automobile is provided under the collision and comprehensive portions of a policy. Collision coverage applies when you have an accident involving another vehicle or an object, such as a telephone pole, a guardrail, a building, or when you overturn your vehicle. Comprehensive coverage applies in losses involving fire, theft, vandalism, broken glass, hitting an animal, flood or hail damage, or other losses not caused by collision. These coverages have a deductible, the amount you must pay before the insurance company pays for damages. Common collision deductibles are $500 or $1,000, and common comprehensive deductibles are $100 or $250. If your automobile is financed, then you're required by the bank or financer to carry comprehensive and collision coverages until that loan is paid off. It's important to note, an insurance company will never pay more to fix your vehicle than the vehicle is worth. Two other coverages available through many insurance companies are towing and emergency road service and rental car reimbursement. While these coverages are optional, I always recommend them as part of my full coverage package. Automobile insurance rates are based on many factors, including where you live, your age, what you drive, how much you drive, and the coverage you carry. One way to keep your insurance costs down is to take high comprehensive and collision deductibles. As a vehicle gets older and is not financed, many people choose to drop these two coverages completely as a way to save money. Additionally, many people choose to pay for small claims out of their own pockets as a way to keep their rates down. But remember, the coverage you carry is just one of the factors contributing to the cost of insurance. There are things you can do to make sure you get the best price possible. The first is to keep your driving record clean. Your driving record is used as a predictor of future experience. Accidents and violations stay on your record for 3 years, and major violations and suspensions stay on for 5 years. Many companies now use a scoring model that combines your driving record with a variety of other information, including certain elements of your credit history and prior insurance claims to determine your cost for insurance. This means that paying bills on time could affect your insurance rate, as could the number of claims you file on your policy. Automobile insurance can be confusing, but a little knowledge can go a long way in providing you the protection you need.
Okay, a little confusing. How about a lot of confusing? Most people do not understand their insurance form. They do not understand what they have just purchased. They just know that they have it, but they don't understand it. So what we're going to try to do is break down some of the components that she talked about into simple layman's terms that you would be able to understand. Okay, I don't want you to be an insurance agent. I want you to have a basic concept of paying only for things that you need. So that's what we're going to take a look at. All right. So I want you to write down these three terms. I will guarantee that one of them will be on your final. Okay, the first one, policy. A policy is a legal contract between you and the insurance company. It's something that they sign, something that you sign. It's binding. It will hold up in the court of law. Now, the premium is the amount of money that you pay each year for that insurance policy. And the thing to remember that there will be a different pay schedule, meaning that you can pay monthly, you can pay every 2 months, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year. But let me tell you this, if you pay for the entire year up front, it will be cheaper than if you were to pay by the month. Because every time that you have to write out a check and they send you a bill or you pay online, they're going to add on administrative cost. So just be aware of that. Now, this is the most complicated term to understand, and that is the word deductible. And deductible is the amount of money that you pay for each crash before the insurance company pays the remaining cost. And you heard me right. Let's just say that your premium is $1,200 and you're paying a little over $100 a month, which would total $1,200. You get involved in a crash, you think the insurance company is going to pay for the crash to repair your vehicle, but they tell you, no, you have a $250 deductible that you have to pay, and then we're going to pay. And you're thinking, well, that doesn't seem beneficial to me. What did I pay for insurance for? They feel to keep insurance costs low, they always will charge you a deductible to make you want to drive safely. Because if people knew that every single scratch, every little thing that happened to their vehicle would be taken care of, people would be making claims all the time. So we only have insurance on our vehicles to pay for the expensive things, the things that are painful to pay for, that cost $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. Now, New Hampshire, the minimum that they talk about in New Hampshire about having is $25,000 of injury or death to one person, 50 for more than one person, and 25 for damage. The only thing that I want you to remember, that is a base policy, that is a cheap policy, that is not one that I would recommend anybody getting. But I would take the numbers that are on the bottom right-hand corner here and replace them with the numbers that the state. So rather than 25 injury or death to one person, you should have $100,000 worth of coverage. If there's more than one person in the car, rather than 50, then you should have 300,000. And then property damage should be up to 50. That is what a basic policy is going to look like. Now, as we said earlier, insurance companies break up their policy into little sections. So the most important section to have, the most important type of insurance to have is called liability. So I want you to write that down and know that for the final. And all I want you to write down is that liability insurance takes care of the other person. And notice we got a list of a lot of things that they will cover. Medical, rehab, funeral, pain and suffering, legal costs, replacing the other person's car. You're taking care of that person. You're trying to make them whole. Okay, that's the most important. That way you're not going to get sued. Now, you may lose your vehicle. Your car's worth $20,000, but you don't have the right type of insurance on it. but at least it's your vehicle, and maybe you've got a relative that will let you borrow one for a while till you save up enough money to purchase another one. But you've got to always take care of the other person. Collision and comprehensive is more about you. It repairs or replaces your car if it's stolen or damaged in any type of accident or storm or natural disaster. If you've been keeping up in the news, the southern part of the country, down around Texas and Louisiana, the hurricanes, with all the wind and trees coming down on top of cars and flooding, this is the type of insurance that will pay for those bills. And by the way, if you want to put this in your notes, if you buy a used car, try to find out where it came from. I will let you know that a lot of times insurance companies will pay claims down to these southern states and take these damaged vehicles from these people and give them money to go buy a new one. And then they take their damaged vehicles, they try to fix them up, and they resell them up here up north. So you could be buying a used car that you think's in great condition. It looks that way from the outside, but it sat in 3 feet of water for about 3 weeks. And you may have a rust problem or a mold problem that you have no idea about. So try to find out where the owners were. Was it ever in a flood? And that's where having the internet to do a Carfax will find out this information. Keep your deductible as high as possible. Okay? If you're a good driver and you know you're not going to be involved, my wife and I, we always go $500 to $1,000 on our deductible. We never go $250, $100, or $0. We always go with very high numbers. Because let me explain it this way, and let me get out of here for a second. The higher the deductible, the lower the premium. The premium you have to pay every year. So let's keep with the $1,200. Okay, you've got to pay that $1,200, but your deductible is $250. If you asked for a deductible for $500, so you went up with a deductible, that $1,200 may go down to $1,000. You just saved $200. But you say, well, I've got to pay $500 now if I'm involved in a crash. Yeah, but don't be involved in a crash. I go years. I've gone in my family car. I've never had a crash. I always go with a high deductible because the likelihood for me using it, it's pretty slim. Okay? So that's a good explanation for deductibles. Personal injury, if you have good medical insurance, you're through your parents or through work, then you probably don't need that too much. Roadside assistant rental reimbursement, I don't do that. I have AAA. I have another driver's ed car if I have to put it on the road. It's my wife's car. She uses it. But if my car was involved in a crash, I could reattach the instructor brake and be right out on the road. So I find ways to lower my policy. Uninsured motorists, this takes care of the medical rehabilitation and funeral bills for you and your passengers. If someone hits you with no coverage or insufficient coverage, this, put a star next to this in your notes. Most states require you to have this. I highly, highly recommend it in New Hampshire because there are a lot of people driving without insurance. Okay, so you really need that. So let me give you a question. Let me pose this question to you. Wonder, you've got your license and you bought a car and you let your friend borrow it. And your car is involved in a crash. What happens? Okay? What happens? A common myth is that if your friend or anybody that you give your vehicle to and they have car insurance, that it's their policy that's going to cover damages. It's not true. It's yours. And it's that insurance that we just talked about. Uninsured and not at fault. So a good rule of thumb, write this down. A good rule of thumb is that car insurance follows the car. So regardless who's driving the vehicle, you, your neighbor, your coworker, if the car's in a car crash, your insurance will pay for it. Here's another thing that will get you really depressed. Males pay more for insurance than females. Okay, now there are some insurance companies that it's going to be a little bit less for males, but they're not many. What I want you to do is write down in your notes is to shop for insurance. Look for the cheapest. Try to compare rates every couple years. Because by comparing rates every couple years, you're going to find a different company wanting your business, so they're going to give you a lower price. As we just covered, don't carry collision or comprehensive, especially on older cars. It's really worthless. Your car's not worth that much money, so just kind of let the insurance company just total out your vehicle. We already talked about increase the deductible to get lower premiums. Taking driver's ed actually, or any type of defensive driving course, lowers insurance. If you were to wait till the age of 18 to get your license, which you could have done, your insurance rates over the next 3 years are going to be so much higher than what you paid for driver's ed, and plus you didn't have your license for 2 years. It just doesn't really make sense for a lot of people. So they think they're saving money for not taking driver's ed, but then they're going to pay more for insurance when they do get their license. And here's a good one since school just started. Keep good grades. The better your grades, the more likely you're going to be saving money. You can save 7 to 10% probably, maybe even as high as 15. Now, what does good grades mean? It means being a B student or above, being in the top percentile of your graduating class, having a GPA that, and it varies because there are many different types of GPAs, but up above a certain GPA will give you a discount. Paying your bills on time and paying them all up front rather than being broken down into little increments. Go on your parents' policy is probably the best. Go on your parents' policy. You're going to be paying less. It's no lie. If you buy your own vehicle and insure the vehicle under your own name, it's going to probably cost you on the low end $1,500 as high as $2,500 a year for a car insurance. Being on your parents' policy, it's going to probably be right around $1,000 or under for females and a little bit above that for males. Choose a car that's less expensive or that's hard for a thief to steal, because the more expensive a car is, the more likelihood they're going to steal it. Then you are going to be paying a premium for car insurance. So car insurance is based upon not only your driving record, but the driving record of your peers. So in every state, New Hampshire rates are different than Maine rates, than Massachusetts and Vermont. So you could be this, well, you are the same person. You could be living in New Hampshire, but 2 months from now, you're living in Vermont. You're driving the same vehicle, but it's going to be a different insurance rate. And I know it's kind of hard to explain or even to understand. Well, why is that? I'm the same person. I'm driving the same car. Why? And it's the same company. Why is it different? Well, we find that because of where you live and what young people do in that particular area, they're going to penalize you, or they're going to give you the benefit of being a good driver, even though you may not be, because other people in your area are good drivers. Now, as I said before, car apps are being implemented to allow people to certain training programs, and this is called the IntelliDrive program. And what they do is they hook up your phone and they basically can tell whether you brake excessively, real hard, real quick accelerations, things like that. So they can monitor through computers and different uh, um, algorithm, different uh, scientific graphs and stuff. Whether you're an aggressive driver, and this could either save you money or not. Let me show you that insurance thing.
When small accidents happen, don't let it take up more time than it has to. Let Allstate's Quick Photo Claim help get you back to your routine without the extra hassle. Once you've downloaded the Allstate mobile app, you can use Quick Photo Claim to submit your damages easily on your smartphone. The Quick Photo Claim feature within the Allstate mobile app is designed to use photos of your vehicle to provide a repair quote for minor damage without having to meet an adjuster or visit a body shop. To begin, make sure you're in a safe, well-lit area and that you have a good cellular connection. Open your Allstate app and select Quick Photo Claim from the home screen. After entering your claim number, the app will prompt you to take at least 3 photos of the damaged area. To avoid glare, turn your mobile camera's flash off. Tap the screen to focus the camera if the shot seems blurry. Next, Quick Photo Claim provides a frame for you to take photos of all 4 corners of your vehicle. The last step is to capture a photo of your odometer and VIN. The app will show you multiple locations where you can find your VIN on your vehicle. After the photos are submitted, an adjuster will review the information. Claim payments can be set up through the Allstate mobile app if you are registered and logged into My Account. Small accidents don't have to be a hassle. Download the Allstate mobile app and let Quick Photo Claim handle your fender bender in no time. Available for download in the App Store or Google Play.
So that's a quick rundown of car insurance and how to handle a crash, about how getting information to the state and to the other person. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Remember, on our remote Facebook page, there's going to be your homework, the worksheet that I want you to do right now. If you can't get it, then I want you to text me and I will send you out a copy via the phone. Tomorrow's night class is on highway driving and road rage, so read chapter 9 and responsible driving and do the questions at the end of that chapter. Hannah, I will give you tomorrow's drive time for 3 o'clock. I don't know, like Ben, I don't even see if Ben he was here earlier. Whether people want to drive B period, or is there someone that wants to drive during their lunch? I remember I'd come get you, so at home. But if you want to drive during lunch, just let me know, and we'll try to work up a schedule because our availability is going to be less and less, and I don't want this to get strung out into October. Now you may not care because maybe your birthday's in October, but I want to get you done as quickly as possible. So 5 o'clock I still have open for tomorrow night. I've got a couple more for Friday and Saturday, but we'll talk again on tomorrow night at class about that. And Monday we'll be able to. No, it doesn't. Didn't he say the insurance follows the person? It follows the car. So the car and the person is really one in the same. So that's a good question. Um, so I can see where you thought that, but it really is the car. Okay, and that's not so much the person. Um, all right, so that is it for tonight. I'm going to be texting to some of you. That would be great. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Okay, good. Good night.